So I normally wouldn't do this before recording, but I want to dedicate this week's intro song to the Brian Wortman and his 2018 Dynasty season. And here we go.
When it all falls down, telling you all, it all falls down. When it all falls down, telling you all, it all falls down. When it all.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Jay Santos here, lead commish, with my main man, Dougie Fresh. How you doing, boy?
Yo, dudes.
What's going on? What's new? What did you do this past weekend?
What did I do this weekend? There's two for you already off the bat. Mind over matter, not working. I watched a little football, I guess. I think I watched some Notre Dame. Like Saturday, we had a little college football Saturday. You know, it was kind of a low-key weekend for us. It was really nice.
Just a little insight for whoever's listening. But right before we recorded, Doug said, I'm going to try and do no ums. And within the first words that he said, there was two.
Listen, you hit me with an off-the-wall question. I was already in football mode, and you're asking me about last weekend. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast, pal.
Well, that's not an excuse whenever I ask you a football question, because you also have a million ums then.
No, I'm always prepared for your football questions.
Not from what I've edited and not what people listen to. But as Sean would say, I digress. All right, guys. So we're going into week 11, and this is going to be a shorter recording because we don't have too much to talk about as we move on and get closer to the fantasy playoffs. But we're going to go over our betting locks from last week, the matchups, the picks, the current standings, some waiver moves, bye weeks, this week's matchups, and then the new betting locks of the week. So, nice little segue to go into our former betting locks of the week. And we did pretty well as a group. I did well. I mean, maybe I just did well. I went 2-0. I picked the Chargers getting 10 and the Saints getting 5.5, and pretty much won that handily. And then when it came to your betting locks, you also took the Chargers and you took Dallas, and that was a good pick right there. But you had Tampa and Atlanta. Tampa at 2.5 and Atlanta giving 7. What happened?
I'll tell you this. Tampa was like kind of right. They put up like 5 million yards in that game and didn't score a touchdown. So I'm not terribly upset with that one. Atlanta did get their fucking back doors blown in. Not ideal, but we'll get back at it this week. We'll pick another couple losers, couple winners, and keep everybody happy.
Yeah, the Falcons got punched in the mouth by someone that we'll get to in a minute. But just to go over our betting locks so far, I'm undefeated, and Doug is a very respectable 5-2. So going into our Week 10 recap, the top matchups were the Beaties versus Sean, Doug versus Tommy, and why don't we go into your matchup versus Tommy? Was it really that much of a matchup?
Not really. My Chiefs showed up for me against Arizona. It was a matchup I was a little bit skeptical of against Arizona with Patrick Peterson, but Tyreek Hill was bawling. He was bawling from the first drive, put up 30 points for me. It was kind of a wrap from there. You know.
Oh, did I lose you?
Same thing. So got some production from my key rookies.
Yeah, you got some production from, Carry On. Well, it was pretty much Carry On and Tyreek that carried you in this game.
Was.
Cooper and Galladay had respectable games, but you had your running backs did pretty much nothing. And then Tommy had just Aaron Jones. I love Aaron Jones. That breakout in the second half is just looking better and better with Aaron Jones.
Good. I was getting very concerned watching that game. Like, oh no, he might actually still be in this thing. So glad I was able to sneak away after Jones dropped a 30 burger on me.
Well, it's Mike McCarthy, so I mean, if it was any other head coach, he probably would have scored 50 points and then made this a ball game, but it's Mike McCarthy,
It
and
was
he's terrible.
gash.
Yeah, there was just huge holes, lanes, as they say. But this matchup went pretty much accordingly. I think we both took you, like what we were saying. Tommy had a good matchup or a good game from Aaron Jones, but not really much from anybody else. So he'll look to jump right back on the saddle this week. And then the
Yeah,
other
I think just real quick, I think the real Marlon Mack stood up this week. I think this is who he is as a player. I think Indy needs to throw the ball, and I don't think Mack is that involved. So he's got some issues there on the back end.
Yeah, my 2 cents on that is I agree with Marlon Mack. The weeks that he did blow up, it was in very, very good matchups. So as the matchups get tougher, I think this is going to be what he's going to put up. So all right, moving on to the Beaties versus Timmy or Tommy. No wait, what am I looking at? The Beaties versus Sean. This was another one that was not a matchup at all. The Beaties scored the most points this week, and pretty much everyone went off except for, let's see, 3 guys that scored a combined 6 points. You have 3 guys that scored 6 points in total, and you still score 160 points with everybody else. That means
Very solid. Very good.
everyone did very, very well on their team. You know, Gurley's a stud. Austin Hooper also did well. The Beaties have a very, very good team, so they might be feeling really confident that even if 2 of their players, even 3 of their players, don't have a good game, they can still put up point totals like this. And then on Sean's side, you know, some guys that we were talking about that could show up for him in Doug Baldwin and Golden Tate, they didn't. And his running backs, you know, James White finally had a bad game. Maybe this is, you know, things to come with Sony Michel coming back. And also, I think Rex Burkhead is also going to be coming back in a couple weeks. So that might muddy that backfield a little bit. Times are getting a little hairy for Sean, but I still think he can make some noise as the season goes on. What do you think?
Agree with you there. I think we do see some regression from James White. As you mentioned, Michelle back in the mix, running the ball takes figure. You know, look, James White had 1 carry in this game. That's a problem if you're a James White owner relying on the production that he had put up. The schedule's pretty like smooth sailing. The rest of the way they still get Buffalo, the Jets twice, Miami. So some games where they shouldn't really be forced to throw it a ton. So James White, I would expect his production to really regress back to, you know, a much more back end RB2 guy, which is kind of a bummer for me. I have him in the other league, as we know. Huge day from Beckham. That was nice for Shauno, but didn't get a whole lot else. Edelman got dinged up in that game. And then on the other side, just the one player I want to call out for the Beaties, McCaffrey is a fucking hammer. Like, this guy, he only got 14 carries, and he puts up almost 35 points. Just so involved in the passing game. He gets, you know, if he catches the ball, he's getting 5 yards, and that's just a really dangerous. I mean, the game flow obviously favored that, you know, that play style, catching a bunch of balls. But this guy's really good. He might carry them to a pretty significant finish in this league.
I'll just throw this out before we go into the next matchup. Do you think that there's going to be touchdown regression with Christian McCaffrey just because he's got 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games? I don't really see that being something he's going to sustain for the rest of the season. But do you?
No, you're probably right. Right, he probably doesn't score, you know, a touchdown in 3 quarters every week on average. But if you look back, the 6 games he played prior to the last 3, he didn't score a touchdown. And I don't think that's really sustainable with how involved he is. So, yeah, I think he's probably a 10 to 12 touchdown a year guy. And right now, if you look at through 10 weeks, he's kind of on pace to do that, maybe a little less. So, yeah, I think he's got with the way he's involved in the offense and how he's used, he's going to get in the end zone a handful of times. So, yeah, he's a 10, 12 touchdown guy. So, you know, the spike we saw in the last 3 games is probably just the average kind of shaken out and him getting back on pace to score those 10 or so touchdowns.
Yeah, I can agree with that. We've seen his ceiling, we've seen his floor. We haven't really seen that happy medium, and so I can agree with that.
His floor is 10 points. Like, that's solid. Doesn't get in the end zone, and he's getting 10 points. Like, that's nice.
Yeah, you want that from your top running back, and with Gurley also on their team as well. If that's going to be your second best running back, you're sitting pretty for the rest of the year. All right, and then the limp dick matchup of the week was Kevin versus Scotty. We had this, or I had this as the limp dick matchup, just because starting off, this looked like it was going to be a blowout from Kevin's side, but big shout out to Scott. Let me give him Scotty with a big win against Kevin, a 117.9 against 114.4. It was more so of a good amount of Kevin's players not showing up, but credit to Scotty because I didn't believe in Matt Breida. I don't think you believed in Matt Breida as well. He scored almost 27 points. The guy balled, and he got another good performance from Devontae Adams. He had 4 catches, but 2 of them go for touchdowns. And so those are really the 2 guys that carried him. And when it comes to Kevin's side, I thought Tevin Coleman was going to have a better game, but it looked like maybe game script got away from him in that game. Saquon really didn't do well, but what really put him behind the 8 ball was his defense scoring -7 points. If they just score 0 points, he gets the win.
If he just starts Detroit on his bench, who gets -3, he wins the game.
Any other negative defense team, he would have won, which is crazy.
That's
So
just
shout out to
just
Scotty.
unlucky, right?
Yeah.
Buffalo throwing up 41 points, like, that's vicious. That's a viciously bad beat.
I saw something that the 41 points were the most points that they scored combined over the last 4 weeks. That's so gross. How are you an NFL team, and that's a real life stat?
He got
Barkley. And
Barkley.
Yeah, Hall of Famer. Bills Mafia is already trying to make him a first ballot Hall of Famer. Anything else you got to add about this?
Nah, Barkley's getting fit for a bust, you know what I mean? And not the Barkley we thought.
Yeah. And the other matchups that we had was me versus Brian, and then Timmy versus Nick. This is another, we'll go into Timmy versus Nick. Here goes another upset of the week. So let me just, Nicky Babes.
Hey,
Nicky
how are you?
Babes coming through. He almost had the top scoring point total this week with 157.9 going against Timmy's 121.5. He had 3 of the top 4 running backs this past week. We already mentioned McCaffrey, but actually Nick Chubb scored the most points this week. And then David Johnson and Zeke scored the 3rd and 4th most, and they all scored over 30 points. All 3 of those guys combined was over 101, 102 points. If you get 102 points just from 3 guys, you're a lock to win. You have to be.
Yes.
Well, actually, he wouldn't have been a lock if he went against the Beaties, but it's good to see Nick come through with a nice win. We all know he needed it, but this is what we were saying before. We said last week that Timmy was probably going to get the win because Roethlisberger put up 36 points on Thursday night, but we both thought that Nick was actually going to put up a respectable point total with his running backs mainly, and that's kind of what happened. I mean, it was a great performance from his running backs. David Johnson looked like the David Johnson of old in 2016. Zeke was just leaping over all the Eagles defenders, scoring on the ground and in the air. And then Nick Chubb, Nick's got to be feeling really, really good selecting him in the 2nd round of the rookie draft.
Yep.
Now he's got a very, very promising running back group, not just for the rest of this year, but for years to come. And then when it comes to Timmy's side, he got his production from Kamara and Melvin Gordon. But if you look at the rest of his players, and also Roethlisberger, but if you look at the rest of his roster, he got pretty much nothing out of the rest of his roster. Cooper Cup goes down. He was having a good game before he got hurt. We'll talk about that in a little bit with his ACL being torn, but really nothing from his flex position, really nothing from his other two wide receivers. I don't know. This might be things to come if he doesn't get more production from any other position besides the running backs. What do you think?
Yeah, for Timmy, the swing guys to me feel like Drake and Hilton. If those guys go for 10, 15, 20 points, he's going to win. I mean, Gordon and Kamara are going to eat. Roethlisberger, he's not going to go for 35 every week, but with the weapons he's got, he's going to throw 2 touchdowns every week, it feels like. So he's in a good spot with his kind of core 3 there. But, yeah, I mean, looking at the rest of this roster, it makes me feel pretty good about what I've got. I mean, he's got the hammers, right? He's got a Kamara and a Gordon. I don't have that. But I've got guys who just kind of put up 10 to 12, and he doesn't have that on the back end. So, yeah, definitely times that are concerning here for Timmy. Cup going down definitely hurts him. Granted, he had Thielen on bye, but, you look at the rest of the bench, there's not a whole lot else there. So, going to the other side, I mean, Nick only had to start 3 running backs and a quarterback to win this matchup. Now, granted, that's kind of what Nick does every week because the receivers are so bad. But, and the other thing, too, for Nick, Rashad Penny on the bench. And granted, I mean, he's not going to start him, but just to see him kind of go off and look pretty sharp. Now that situation is so muddy, and Pete Carroll's like the worst for trying to peg who the back is going to be, has been for years. But, good things for Nick here at the running back position. One more good rookie draft with some receivers, and he's right back in this thing.
Yeah, he had a good rookie draft. I mean, if you look at his first 3 picks of Baker Mayfield in the 3rd, Penny in the 1st, and Chubb in the 2nd, that's going to be a solid running back and also quarterback group for the foreseeable future. I think one more thing before we go into me and Brian, and that's I think another swing guy that Timmy has is Derrick Henry, not just because he performed well this past week, but I think Tennessee has a favorable schedule the rest of the year. And if he's going to be, the goal line guy, which he was against the Patriots, that could be someone that Timmy needs to lean on for the rest of the season. And then when it comes to my matchup against Brian put up a respectable 121 points, but wasn't enough. I put up 155 points, didn't really get major games from a lot of my players, but Zachy Ertz, the Ertzman, he put up almost 34 points, so that really put me over the edge. So I think we both saw this come. Actually, no, you picked Brian to win this game, but I think that was just because you want me to lose, not so much that you thought Brian was going to beat me. But yeah, I think this is what we've seen from Brian's team. They score 120, 125, and he ends up on the losing end. He didn't get great games from his running backs. He did get a good game from LaShawn McCoy, almost scoring 25 points. That kind of came out of nowhere. He hasn't really produced all that much. But Michael Thomas and Antonio Brown had great games. It just seems like Brian's team, not every single position puts it together, or at least the most of his team doesn't put it together on a given week when you have Jarvis Landry and O.J. Howard combining for 5 points. This is what has happened to Brian this year.
Agreed. Yeah, it's been a tough go for Brian. On your side, you got the floor kind of from a bunch of guys. I mean, Peterson, Mixon, Kittle, even Gordon, like these are kind of their floors. And when the 4 guys whose floor add up to 40, 50 points, then you add in a couple guys, I mean, even Connor, like 13, like that's kind of his floor. And he got hurt in that game. So, your team's really, really rounding into form. Julio getting into the end zone back-to-back weeks has got to be great. I mean, he's on pace. He's having another awesome season. Over 100 yards for 5 of his last 6 games. He's a monster. And now he's got touchdowns, and he seems to be finding the a little bit more red zone chemistry with Matt Ryan, and that's got to be a good feeling for you. So, yeah, Ertz, I mean, that's a massive game. This dude's this has got to be one of the greatest fantasy tight end seasons we've seen. and he's only gotten in the end zone 5 times in 10 games. So this dude's a hammer. You're looking good. Kittle, I mean, another guy who's he's pretty fucking awesome out there. He's kind of all they have, and defenses still can't cover him. So definitely a scary team rounded into shape you are.
And I really contemplated putting either Corey Davis or Allen Robinson over Kittle, but I wanted to save floor with Kittle and Allen Robinson and Corey Davis both had really promising games, and I think that's going to be, if someone gets hurt, I think I have the subs to put in there to still keep pace with what I'm putting up. But going into the picks this past week, so far I'm 31-19. Dougie didn't do too great with his picks. I think he went more with the upsets this week, and he's 23-27. And then Brian's the opposite.
I'm probably going to stop making picks. I think I'm just going to bow out of the contest.
And Brian is the opposite. He's 27-23. The Beaties were the top performer this week at 159.6, and Sean came in with the lowest performance at 82.5. So rolling into the current standings, I'm in first. Timmy's in second. Doug makes a big move going into third place with Kevin and Matt, the Barretts, and also Tommy losing this week. All three of you guys are 6-4. You have the tiebreaker because of points scored. The Beaties are 5-5. Go ahead. What'd you say?
No, I just said yes, sir. I have the tiebreaker with the points. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I know the Barretts are right behind you in points, not only because that's what the standings say, but I think they're only like 10 points or so behind you. Tommy's got a little ground to make up. But the Beaties, they're in 6th place, and they actually have more points, I think, even than Timmy. So they're doing pretty well. And then Brian, Sean, and Scotty are each 3-7, and then Nick is 2-8. All right, now for waiver moves. Kind of a light week, only 4 moves out of all the teams. Nick picked up Josh Reynolds. Kevin picked up the Steelers D. Doug picked up Jeff Hireman, the tight end on Denver. And then the Beaties picked up Teddy Bridgewater. Why don't you start off with anything you have to say about this?
I like the Bridgewater pickup. I guess, do they hold on to him? I don't know what they do with him, but I think he's a good quarterback. I think he should be a starter in the NFL right now, whether it's Buffalo or the Jets or Arizona, whoever it might be. I think he's good enough to play. So do they have Breeze? They do, right? So maybe that's a little handcuff situation just in case. But, I like that pickup. Hireman, you were making fun of me for Patterson last week, and I dropped him to get Hireman. But that's kind of what I do. I spend like $5 to $7 a week, and I pick up a guy, and if he sticks, he sticks. If he doesn't, he's gone next week. So Hireman had a really nice game the last time they played. He could be a guy. I'm kind of good at tight end anyway, but felt like a guy who I could take a flyer on. Reynolds is a nice little pickup, too, for Nick, as with Cooper Kupp going out. I don't think he's the same player, but he could be in line for, 5-6 targets a week, and that could be pretty good in that offense.
Yeah, I agree with the Reynolds pick. I think he's out of Texas Tech. I think he's like a similar player to Josh Doxson. I mean, that might sound bad, but when you're in the offense of the Rams, I think even Josh Doxson would do amazing in that offense. So I think that's a good upside pick for Nick. And when it comes to Teddy, you didn't name a team that I think he's going to go to next year, and that's the Giants. And if you put him on the Giants, although the offensive line's terrible, the skill position players are up there with, one of the better teams. If they somehow, get even just one starter that's better, whether it's a right tackle, right guard, center, I think that's going to be definitely a better situation for the next quarterback because Eli's gone after this year. And yeah, Hireman, that's Doug's, 1 week pickup right there. I will say you are quick to add someone and also very quick to drop people too.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you do, but I don't hate it. He does have upside in a Denver Bronco offense that usually does well with the tight end.